Hey, welcome back to the Healthy Living Scottsdale podcast. I'm your host, Coach Zach. I am here with Coach Brandy and Coach Kelsey. And today we are talking about stretch therapy, which is the newest addition at Legacy. So we're kind of excited to talk about that. But before we do, we want to give a little shout out to a client of the week. And this week's client has been client of the week before, but wanted to give a shout out to Stacy Phillips. Today is her 13-year anniversary at Legacy, formerly Pulse Fitness. Pulse Fitness when she signed up 13 years ago, but how phenomenal is that?
That is awesome.
Yeah.
13 years of training.
And she is an absolute rock star.
Such a rock star.
Yeah.
Such a rock star. I don't know how old Stacy is, but she looks amazing for whatever her age is. I don't know.
Yep. I don't know either, but I know she looks a lot younger than she may be. She just looks awesome.
Yeah.
She looks really good.
Stacy, you're awesome. Here's to another 13 years of working out and training. I used to have this joke. So, like the Stacy, Clint, Lisa, Kevin, like that was my core group that I trained all the time when I was a coach. And they were the last ones that I stopped training after becoming the director. And, I used to have this running joke with them that like someday I would still be their trainer, but I would open like an old people's home and they would be like 90 years old coming into their fitness class and we would still be like training and working out. Like lift one leg, set it down, lift the other leg, set it down, balance on one leg. That would become our training. But
They can
they crush it.
Especially Stacy. I mean, all of that group in particular, but Stacy can outlift, I'm sure someone in their 20s.
Yeah.
She's really strong.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, shout out to you, Stacy. Great job. And we love you. Okay. So stretch therapy. We had an interesting week last week. So we had the team come in and train and certify us in stretch therapy, which was a little bit of a, I guess, I don't know if it's necessarily like a change of heart, but it took us about a year, I think, of kind of talking about this with the team of, do we want to do this? Do we not want to do this? And it was like, do we really agree with stretching necessarily? And I was kind of against stretch therapy to some degree because I always heard of people going to like a stretch zone or stretch lab and they go in and they get overstretched and then they're just like crushed and they don't feel good. They're injured. And I'm like, well, that doesn't really seem like a good thing to me. Right. So my understanding of like what stretch therapy was that. And what I realized kind of during this decision-making process is there wasn't necessarily that I disagreed with stretching. It was like I disagreed with the protocol and the training practices and all of that these big corporate franchises kind of have and not necessarily having the highest quality of people or trained people coming in and, you just lay down and all of a sudden, they start stretching you, right? So interestingly enough, we decided for many reasons, like, hey, this would probably be something to be beneficial for our clients as long as we as a team are really, really good at it and we're the ones controlling the process, right? So day one of our stretch training, we stretched each other a lot of different stretches, but we also had no idea what we were doing. And so firsthand, Kelsey, we discovered what it's like to get overstretched.
Yes, there's definitely a point of stretching that's going to be beneficial. So like a couple, 1 to 3 reps, 30 seconds, holds. Any longer than that, really not getting any difference. Then there's what we did, which was let's do the left hip stretch 35 times to practice and let 4 different people do that stretch on you who all have different strengths and abilities. Some people are stretching you the whole way. Some people just a little light stretch. Then you got me who got stretched by Zach for one of my last ones, and my hip for about 3 days was overstretched for sure. Yeah. So that's where you go, the part where there is a thing that called overstretching. That's the point we don't want to reach.
Right.
Very important lesson for all of us to
Right.
learn.
Right.
Because I don't think anybody came in the next day feeling like good. I think, like the goal and purpose of doing a stretch therapy session is, there's a lot of benefits, right? Like reduce pain and obviously increase range of motion and flexibility. You can correct a lot of problems, or if you have injuries or things like that. Stretch has been shown in scientific studies to reduce the size of tumors due to the increased blood flow. Like there's all these benefits that we kind of learned about leading up to this process. But yeah, overstretching, not something that feels good. And I think that probably, what I would suggest for everyone to understand that's listening, that's going to be coming in and doing stretch therapy with us is it's not like, hey, I'm going to fix this issue today, right? With the stretch therapy, it's about consistency and repetition.
Right.
And I think if you go into it with the philosophy of like, hey, yeah, I want to come in and get stretched out, like you're going to come in and get stretched out, but you're not really going to notice, and you're going to feel better immediately.
Yeah.
But you're not going to notice any long-term benefits of that for some time. It's going to take a couple of months of you doing this consistently, 1 to 2 or more times a week, with not getting pushed to your breaking point like we all did on our first day, where we're like, we have no idea what we're doing. Let's just stretch each other. and like, that's never what you want, right? It's very, very light. And studies show that on a scale of 0% to 100%, where the most benefit is long-term is at 40% of your max range of motion, or what you could be pushed to. And so this process that we learned is really about hey, we're very light, even to the point where on day 2, we had our some volunteers come in and we stretch them, and they're like, you can go harder, right? You can stretch more. Kelsey's like, no. and we're like, no, we're not going to do that. One, we were probably overly cautious because we're all hurting from getting overstretched. But it's important for people to understand, this isn't a quick fix. You're not going to just come in and get boom, boom, boom. Okay, now you're good to go. It's no, this is something that needs to be built into your regular routine in order for us to really reap the benefits of the stretch therapy.
Yeah, one thing that I really liked about the process that we went through, and the process that we'll be utilizing for our stretch therapy program, is this yellow to red, basically, green, yellow, red scale, so that we want someone to be in the green and yellow. We don't really want to push someone to the red zone, which is too much. And I thought that the stretching felt really great. When we were practicing on each other, it felt amazing. It was really relaxing. Noticed a big difference just from the beginning of how I felt and how my range of motion and mobility before the stretch session compared to how I felt in my range of motion and mobility at the end of the stretch session. So there was some difference there. But there have been some studies that have shown they had one in particular had 2 different groups where they stretched people for a period, I think it was 4 to 6 weeks that they ran this study, and they had a group that was light intensity stretching, and then a group that was medium to harder intensity stretching. And the group with a light intensity stretching had more benefit at the end of the 4 to 6 week session than the group that had the more intense stretching. So I thought that was helpful to learn that there is some scientific research and data around that, and that's the philosophy that we'll be applying with our stretch therapy. We want to keep it on the lighter side of things. And I've really noticed, like, I've been stretching more recently. I've, a couple of areas of my body where I feel really tight, like tight hamstrings. So I've been working on that, and I've noticed, like, with the stretching that I've been doing, I've seen improved range of motion, mobility, with things like RDLs, and even like with squats and working on like stretching my hip flexors and things. Like, those movement patterns have improved over time and feel much better when I'm lifting heavier weights because I have that more range of motion that I've gained through stretching.
Yeah, one thing that was, you guys didn't get to experience this, but on Monday afternoon, when the stretch therapy team got here, Amanda, who's one of the instructors, stretched me for like 10 minutes, which is a very short period of time. But she stretched me for like 10 minutes, and I got off the table and I felt like amazing. And that evening and into the next day, my back felt like the best it's felt in a really long time. Like, I had no back pain. Well, of course, then the next day, then we started stretching each other, and, we're learning this process, and it didn't last all that long, but it was kind of an eye-opening experience for me of like, hey, this is something that I've never really, since being in high school and playing sports, I haven't stretched ever since. Maybe for like, a random yoga class with my wife when we were dating, just because I wanted to, do something with her. I was like, okay, I'll go to yoga with you. But ever since then, like, I've never really spent any amount of time stretching whatsoever. And I feel like I have pretty good range of motion on a lot of things. Like, I can bend over and put my hands on the floor, not just like touch my toes, So I'm like, do I really need to stretch? I still have the mobility, but it was, I think, like the combination and the sequence that the instructor was taking me through and stretching me and hitting different groups, different muscle groups, where it was like, oh, okay, now all of a sudden kind of this issue that I have is everything's kind of relaxed and there's not as much tension. And the pain relief I was like very pleasantly surprised. I was like, okay, dang, if I could feel like this every day, that would be pretty amazing, right?
Well, there's a longevity aspect to it as well, and health span component. Just like as we age, we tend to lose muscle mass, bone density. We can also lose flexibility and range of motion. So if you want to live as long as possible, be as active and healthy as possible into later life, it's great to focus on strength training. It's great to focus on, your cardiovascular health, nutrition. Flexibility and range of motion is another thing that's important to focus on, because if you don't, you're going to lose that. And over time, as you age, those things just get worse. Your flexibility gets worse. Your range of motion will get worse, and that can affect someone. Like, if you fall down and you need the range of motion and flexibility to be able to get up and off the floor on your own, that can be life-saving, important thing to have.
Yeah, and I think I can't remember the exact percentage, but I know after the age of like 24 years old, your flexibility over the course of, 30 years decreases dramatically. And it's not like incremental, but it's, over that 30 years, there can be accelerated periods and not as much. And obviously there's lifestyle factors and all that, but it's like staggering the amount of flexibility that you lose. Like rigor mortis is setting in before you even, kick the bucket type of thing.
When you say that, it makes me think, like, remember when we were in school and we used to have to do the sit to reach thing, or like touch your toes, and everyone's like, oh, look, I can go past my toes, I can push the board. If I had to do that now, I wouldn't be able to get to my ankles, like my flexibility is already out the window. So I think that was one benefit that I really found helpful from learning about everything that we did those 2 days, was having someone else stretch me felt not as intense as like I would typically stretch, but I felt better from someone else doing it versus like me sitting down and doing some of my basic simple stretches, And
I think that's one of the main benefits of stretch therapy is, like, I got stretched that day and felt amazing. I've spent about 5 minutes stretching since, right? And I'm like, man, I felt so good. I need to stretch. And then when it comes down to it, I'm not really like prioritizing that. I'm like, I'm gonna go lift some weights, right? Because that's just what I enjoy doing. But it's like, if I had an appointment, if I was going in and one of you guys was going to stretch me, it's like I would be there for that. I would get stretched regularly. And I'm actually looking forward to the fact that at this point we have a good foundation, but we're also like, hey, we're going to practice on each other for probably another like 2 weeks just to make sure we're never going to overstretch somebody and we got this process down and we know we're experts at it, not we never hurt somebody. And I'm kind of looking forward to that because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to get practiced on. I'm going to get more stretching. So I think that's one of the main benefits, especially for our clients who we know need to stretch. They need the mobility stuff. We recognize these things on the training floor where there's, a lack of range of motion or a movement flaw or some sort of compensation. And it's like, man, you can fix that. We just got to get you in for some regular stretch sessions, and we're going to solve that problem. We're going to improve your mobility. We're going to, potentially eliminate that
low back pain,
that low back pain, knee pain, those things that you have that you just aren't spending enough time addressing, or you don't have the expertise to do it on your own, and you need to come in and know exactly what stretches to be taken through.
Yeah. And I just want to thank our legacy members who volunteered to come in and let us practice with them. I won't name names, but there was one person in particular who was stretched and, afterward, well, actually there are several people that got stretched and then afterwards said they felt really great. But one in particular said their shoulder felt much better, had never felt so good. Another one reported that their hips had been bothering him and now his hips were feeling really great after being stretched, and he couldn't figure out what was going on, what was causing the pain. And, now it's been about a week since that stretch session, and his hips are still feeling really good. And that's after one session.
And that's really exciting to me because I felt like, this is day 2 of training for us. We didn't have much experience as kind of a crash course for us to get a really good foundation. I don't think there was a single person that got stretched that afterward wasn't like, oh, this feels so much better. Like my body feels so much better. That's really encouraging. It's really exciting. And it makes me, excited for our clients to have them, come in and get stretched and feel like that every day, right? And eliminate a lot of the issues. So, all right, guys, we just wanted to kind of give a recap on, the training process and what we went through. And I think it was a good thing that we overstretched each other and we were like hurting the next day because we know what that's like. We experienced it now. Maybe that's by design from the instructor's part is like, hey, yeah, we want you to know what that feels like so you don't do it to your clients. But we're going to be, like I said, practicing on each other for a couple of weeks, and we're going to roll this out to all of our clients, and we're super excited to get you guys in and get you reaping the rewards of this. So that's all we got. We'll be back next week with more great stuff. Thank you so much for listening to the Healthy Living Scottsdale podcast. Do you have a question that you'd like for us to answer live on the podcast? If so, all you need to do is head over to the Apple Podcast app on your iPhone and do 3 simple things. First, leave us a rating and review telling me what you think of the podcast. In that review, ask anything you want related to health, fitness, or nutrition. And if you want a shout out, leave us your Instagram handle or name. That's all you have to do. Then listen to hear your questions answered live on the next Q&A episode.